Alright, it's 2006. You're browsing this cool new website called YouTube when you find a trailer for a weird looking movie called Footsteps. It's in 244p, you can't see what's happening most of the time, most of what you can see looks cheap as hell, and you forget about it almost immediately. Bam! Now it's 2014. Footsteps has a 4.1 out of 10 on IMDb, and you've just finished watching one of the greatest action films of all time. The production value is incredible. Every movement of the actor and camera is beautifully choreographed, the story is complex and engaging, and everything is constantly ramping up further and further, even when you think it can't. You've just watched The Raid 2. The Raid 2 is an Indonesian film directed by Gareth Evans, the same Gareth Evans who got his start with making that weird movie in 244p, and also the mastermind behind the first Raid. These films focus on the martial art of pencaksilat, which Gareth himself is only somewhat practiced with. These movies are built on a foundation of turning up the volume. Everything ramps up, every fight is bigger than the last, each enemy getting scarier and scarier.
I really don't like watching action movies where they blow their load on the first fight scene and then all of a sudden the rest of the action scenes are kind of like pale in comparison and weak. And so what I wanted to do with it was then to kind of say, all right, every fight is a progression. Every fight is a bit harder. Every fighter has to be harder. And then you fall into that trap fall of being like, here we go. So every bad guy now is the next challenger, it's the next end of level boss. And so then, yeah, it's a video game mentality.
This is Gareth's style. This is his unique way of storytelling. Why make action something that stays the same? Why make it something that doesn't continue challenging you? Why make it something to turn your brain off to? You shouldn't, and Gareth knows this, which is what leads us into the kitchen fight. This is a nearly 8-minute long fight scene about two incredibly talented fighters reaching the absolute peak of their abilities, and it encompasses everything Evans wants to put into his films. This fight is the culmination of everything else in the film. Each action scene is bigger than the last and more of a challenge for Rama. Our very first fight is just the main character beating up a bunch of prisoners in a bathroom, and this steadily evolves over the course of the film to have him fighting street thugs, police officers, and eventually professional hitmen. Right before the kitchen fight, Rama has to go through Baseball Batman and Hammer Girl, who pose the biggest threat to him so far out of the entire movie. Despite his difficulties here, the film still has more to throw at him, an escalation. The kitchen fight itself is ferocious, brutal, and challenges Rama in a way that we have literally never seen him challenged before. Both of these fighters are the best of the best, and need to use every advantage they can to claw their way to the top. Evan knows that he has to capture this. He knows that to make something like this work, he needs to show every piece of it.
I'm more fascinated by the old-fashioned style of shooting and editing action. More clarity and detail in terms of the fight sequences, less flashy editing. I'm not a fan of swooping camera work where you kind of like hand it here with hand it there and then have this flashy cut to showcase a piece of action. Show it in the camera frame, show it in the physicality of what that person is doing is much more interesting than some special effect.
And he isn't just showing actors fighting here, he's showing character with every move these people make. This isn't a formal combat setting where the two participants are going to spar and try to execute the most professional moves they can. They're fighting for their lives, and we see their brains run wild trying to do so. Gareth Evans puts a lot of thought into making sure each piece of action has reason behind it.
Kami sangat-sangat salut dengan sutradara Gareth Evans yang dia bisa mengkolaborasikan teknik bela diri pencaksilat dengan semua bentuk dan emosi dari setiap teknik yang kami berikan, yang kami sajikan.
He knows the characters in these scenes so well that he intentionally tries to incorporate their personalities into the decisions they make.
The idea is that he'll always go in between one of us so that there's no option for the third to attack. So it's always about finding that position and then the guy constantly shifting it so you won't just stay there, but he'd go there, attack you, and then he'd come between or switch his position so that he's never in a position where there's a vulnerability spot.
And that's a lot of what Gareth Evans focuses on in this film. Not just the fighting and action, but the people behind them. When people think about adding character and action, most of the time you'll end up with a fight constantly interrupted by dialogue, because dialogue is one of the easiest ways to convey character. But why would you stop fighting to say something when your life's on the line? Some people might, but Rama doesn't, and instead his character shines through his decision making. Evans even takes into account the real life events his actors go through in order to write situations where the characters can have more authentic emotional stakes.
And so, now he's going through, he got married and then was expecting his first child, and so all these little sort of world experiences that he's gaining now, horribly I'm able to kind of, not exploit, but call upon to help him get to that right headspace for the role.
Gareth Evans is a filmmaker defined by his incorporation of character and action. He cares about who his characters are, and seeks to challenge them further and further throughout every fight. He doesn't make something flashy for the sake of it. He looks at action through a practical yet theatrical way that solidifies him as one of the best action directors of all time.